Hey, what's up everybody? It's Rita Saeli, your Catholic girl on the radio. Today we are tackling the subject of what if God is not willing? So here's the thing. There are so many times in the Bible where people would come to Jesus and they would ask him to cure someone, and they would say something like, if you're willing, and Jesus' response was, I'm willing. And usually the reaction in this case would be a joyful one. But there's a question that arises in this situation. What would you do if Jesus' answer was, I'm not willing? Because if we're telling God, if you are willing, then we're giving him the option, right? So what if he says, I'm not willing? Now imagine this with me. Usually when we have something happen in our lives, we go to God, and when he does it, we tell the world that this is what happened. But what if he says, I'm not willing? I think there are generally two options. One, react violently. In a sense, we lose trust in God and we lose hope in him, and we just kind of let go of him. Even though he may have done many things that proved his love for us on a daily basis, we just think, okay, I'm done. Our relationship is done. I don't trust God anymore. Is he really there? We start questioning his existence. We react violently, and that is if he doesn't do what we're asking. Just like a little child, when you don't give him what he wants, they start reacting violently, even though like they throw a tantrum kind of thing, even though that's not, you're doing this for their benefit. The other aspect could be that we thank him for his mysterious wisdom that we don't know, but we know that he is just and kind, right? So we thank him because in his mysterious wisdom, he has so much, he is wisdom, really, and he knows what is best. And even though what is best doesn't match our expectation, we still thank him. Why? Because we already know that he is just, and because we already know that he is kind. So when he refuses our request, as if it's a request, it's not because he doesn't love us. Right? When he's saying no to what we're asking, it's not because God doesn't love me. That's not it at all. It's quite the opposite, really. Because if we think about it, everything that he does is through love, because the Bible tells us God is love. And the sooner we understand that concept, the sooner we figure out kind of that God is with us even when we think he's doing something completely different than what we'd hoped. It is because it's unnecessary, because to move on to this next spiritual course, we must go through the training and conditioning. And I think a lot of us miss that. That when God is saying no, it's not because God is bad, or God is not trustworthy, or he's not here, or he's not listening. But again, it is because we need to go through this experience, through the training and conditioning. Think about it this way. When an athlete is faced with a challenge, what he or she does is that they do not give up. Right? There is a challenge. No one really wants to wake up at 4 a.m. No one wants to make sure that their food is exactly on point. I don't think that's as much as we try, we kind of have always this wiggle room. But for these athletes, they have to. And what they do is they just don't give up. But they continue to challenge themselves to the fullest extent. Why do they do that? Because they know that when they condition themselves, when they put themselves through this rigor, or when their coach puts them through this rigorous course, it is for their benefit. They don't hate the coach. They don't start yelling, because they know and they understand that it is for their benefit. So in this case, when God says, I'm not willing, we should know that it is a time where he will give us the strength to spiritually handle more. When he says, I am not willing today, does not mean he's not willing forever, but today, when he's not changing things at this very moment, excuse me, when he's not changing things at this very moment, what he's saying is that I'm going to give you more strength to spiritually handle more. Now, what do we do in this case? We continue praying. We don't stop praying. We may even pray more. We may put ourselves through this kind of, silent retreats. We may increase in novenas. We may increase in rosaries, in praying more rosaries, because that is how we spiritually become stronger. We read the Bible more. We indulge ourselves in God's word so that we can understand what he is saying. So what's happening really is in this time we're kind of shifting. We're shifting between being able to lift 100 pounds to being able to lift 150. Right? If we're still training, if we're going through the gym, and this transition is when we are becoming stronger. When we say, I'm not willing, when God says, I'm not willing, he's not saying, I don't love you. And that's essential to understand. When God is saying, I am not willing, he is not saying, I do not love you. And that's something I think that we have to put through our minds. We have to keep that constant, that when God is saying, I'm not willing, he is not saying, I don't love you. Really. For really, as he tells Saint Faustina, and this is one of my favorite saints, one of my favorite books to read was the Diary of Saint Faustina, and I actually keep a copy with me all the time. He says, if my death on the cross doesn't prove to you that I love you, what will? Let that sink in for a little bit. If my death on the cross doesn't prove to you that I love you, what will? It's not about what he gives us, although these are amazing gifts and the grace is amazing. It really is about his love on the cross. I once asked Jesus, how could I show God's mercy to the world? Or how have you shown the mercy to the world? And I looked up as I was going to receive communion and I saw the cross, and he told me at that moment, it is through the cross, and I understood it perfectly. It is through the cross that Christ showed his mercy to the world. And so if we do not look at the cross and we do not understand his mercy, then we do not understand his love. So with every moment, every time you kind of think to yourself, oh, well, God is saying no, he's not listening, he's mean, he's any of these things, remember his death on the cross and meditate on it. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to meditate on the stations of the cross, because really in times of need you really understand more of why God is doing this because of them. Even though you might not be going through anything right now, just remember that in times of need, listen or pray the stations of the cross, because it's very essential. So yes, I expect him to heal those I bring to him the way I want, because I have faith that he can, and that's true. So you probably go to God and say, I have faith in you. If you're willing, you can do this. But because I have faith in him, I also have faith in his time and in his methodology. So at times we say, okay, God, I want you to do this, and this is the way I want you to do it. And at times he really does. Other times he doesn't. So why? What's going on there? Well, we have to trust his timing, and we have to trust his methodology, because his method of healing may not match my method of healing. There were so many blind people that Jesus healed, but each with a different method. Think about it. So he said open, and they opened. To some, he took mud and he spit in it and put it on their eyes, And still to others, he led them away, and then that's when their eyes opened, right? He says, go and wash up in this lake. And then this is when their eyes, as they were going, their eyes were open. And so the good Lord has his methodology. He knows that the time of healing needed for this person and everyone around them. He understands this. This is really good, right? So when God's saying, I'm not willing, really, really think about it, sometimes is the best form of healing. Why, you may ask? Good question. I love when you have good questions. Well, Jesus isn't just interested in healing the body. He is far more concerned with healing the soul. Not just the soul of a person asking for healing, but for everyone that person encounters. Really, primarily their family, everyone, their friends, everyone around them. So we have the spiritual healing. This will become a stronger testimony than that of the physical. And we don't often think about that. We kind of go to God and say, fix this. But we don't think about the spiritual healing that he's actually doing. And we don't think about the fact that treatments sometimes take a long time. You have medication that you take for a week, and you have medication that takes for a lifetime. And some issues we really struggle with a lifetime. For example, take the 10 people with leprosy. Only one came back glorifying God and thanking Jesus. What happened? Well, really, what happened is that he received this spiritual healing, and this healing was transferred to everyone around him. His life was transformed not by the physical healing, although that was the start-off point or the starting point, but when he recognized the hand of God. That's when he was really healed. Because he came back glorifying God. He saw the physical healing, and he knew who to attribute this to. Although all of them were healed, he knew that the attribution came from God, and that this enriched him, and that makes a difference. That's when spiritual healing changes everyone around us, or our physical healing changes everyone around us. So really, very often we look at the cross before us and we say what Peter said to Jesus. God forbid. But Jesus, knowing the value of the cross for humanity, did not view it as a punishment as Peter did. And we don't think about that. Really, Peter, Jesus said, I'm going to die, and Peter says, God forbid. But to Jesus, that wasn't death. It was death, but it was more than that. It was the resurrection. So what happened with Peter? He ended up rebuking Peter, saying, depart from me, Satan. Is Peter Satan? No. That thought of saying no to God's grace, that is not a good one. The cross is not a punishment, really. It's a gift that holds a value that resonates beyond the self to society, right? It resonates beyond me, from just me to the society that's around me, and that is what the cross does. That is why it's so important. So let the hope remain the answer that I will rather than the not. And even if time passes, our hope will remain the same. So kind of remain hopeful that God will say I will, but in his timing. Think about it this way. When we talk about Lazarus, he waited after he heard their cries. He waited after he knew that he was dead. He heard their cries until the time was right. So instead of healing Lazarus, what he actually did with him is he actually raised him from the dead. And that's just mind-blowing. And that's Lazarus, his friend, one of his favorite people, one of his best friends. So he waited until Lazarus died, even though they asked him, they came to Jesus and say, hey, he's sick. He waited until his death. And he he waited a few days after. And they were crying and they were hurt, and they came to Jesus. Mary and Martha came to Jesus and said, hey, why didn't you heal my brother? You've healed everyone else. Why didn't you heal my brother? And he says, have faith. And so he walked to the grave and he says, rise. And he did, and Lazarus did. So we too hope for the same thing from one who's capable. We hope that he would heal, and he will. God does not let prayers go astray, kind of thing. He will. But if today the answer is, I am not willing, know that it's not because he doesn't want to. It's because you need this. You need what you're going through, and have hope, have faith in him. And he will in his time and in his methodology. So, what if the answer is not, I'm not willing, in the first place? What if the answer is, I'm willing, but not the way you expect? What if that's what God is really trying to tell us? We must not place the infinite within the limits of the finite, or the finite. Really, we're placing limits on him, and he is beyond us. He is outside of time. In this case, we are replacing the capacity of the Creator with that of the created. We think he's like us. Yes, he became like us in every way to save us, but he is still God. And he is still beyond the created. He is the creator, the one, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning of and the end, of which we will reach the extremities of errors, for the creation will never meet up to the level of the Creator. So whatever it is that we are trying to do, it may not match what his plan actually is for us. And that is why there's always not the way you expect. Because really, the Jews, when they waited for the Messiah, they thought it was the Messiah that would deliver them from Rome. A military leader, fighting military oppression. But that wasn't the case at all. Jesus came as a savior, and that's who he is. So that's it for today. Don't forget to follow on The Word with Rita on Instagram if you want to hear more of these, or hear more of these podcasts. Listen to us every week. But if you want to see more videos and get to hang out with me or message me, this is where you find me at The Word with Rita. Have a good day, y'all.